I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
everybody.
Welcome to Arcane Mark's biased reactions to Mwangi Expanse, Lost Omens, Mwangi Expanse.
Well, we pick up again with the city of Jaha.
An ancient city filled with unsolved mysteries and haunted by past wrongs. Jaha is a republic which has primary languages of Iruxi, Lirgani, and Mwangi. Not necessarily in that order, but there are a lot of Iruxi there. Yeah, there's alphabetical. At first I thought, I was like, is Iruxi actually the main language? And then I realized it was alphabetical.
That's
because
true.
It's 70% humans, 28% Iruxi, and 2% other.
When it comes to the traits of this settlement, the people of Jaha tend to be wary of outsiders and skilled at divinations from reading the stars.
Yep.
Astrology is really big here.
Absolutely. They are worried about mysterious disappearances and undead. They've got a prominent non-binary Iruxi astrologer who's a social restorationist. There's a female human aristocrat who's a prominent socio-political leader, and a female human diplomat who is the head ambassador. Their resources are like astronomy books and livestock and grain, luxury goods, magic items, and textiles.
It's a good mix.
Yep, they've got a lot really going on, and there's a cool map that you can see of Jaha.
So I'm noticing in this map that they've got the four corners of the walls marked. I haven't read about the city more, but I'm interested to learn.
And you can see they each have a shigi in the name of what is at those corners. So we'll see that when we go deeper into learning about Jaha. So the important thing to remember, and that we've seen in prior episodes when we're thinking about Jaha, is thinking about Lirgan, and that's one of those two nations that got destroyed by the Eye of Abendigo when the whole Sunland situation happened. And so it was guided by the Salak Brethren, who were astrological philosophers that led them up to prosperity, but then there was a problem, and a bunch of farmers marched on the capital and abandoned the nation. And then the Eye of Abendigo came, and many Lirgani escaped due to their excellent advanced technology of ships. But Yamasa, which was a country founded by those farmers who marched on Lirgan, did not have those ships and suffered heavier losses and escaped to live among the Matangi orcs. That's sort of something that happened, and it's important to the backstory of Jaha because, well, when we said Lirgani is one of the most common languages, that is because there were Lirgani occupants of Jaha during Lirgan.
That's interesting. So the people who used to live there were extremely xenophobic humans who enslaved Iruxi.
Yep.
And believed that they were basically destined chosen ones by prophecy of the stars.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those people vanished very recently. And so a new group has come in to occupy the ruins. A group that was coming in, a diverse group of people who were coming in to try to get the city to open up and change its ways. And when they got there, there's like, oh, no one's here. I guess we'll use this city then.
So it's one of those disappearing city tropes that you find in Golarion, like a startling amount and a scary amount, perhaps. And so this new coalition is basically started by a we talked about the three people there, and Iakane Arsani is who we said was a socio-political leader, is one of the main people who started out, was a Lirgani noble who lost faith in the stars after the whole Eye of Abendigo incident, as well as the Iruxi astrologer that we mentioned, and they all sort of made work together to create this new coalition for Jaha.
So because the city used to be much, much larger than it is now. So you have 7,000 people living in a space that was built for tens of thousands. There's a lot of potential for growth.
Yep, you can sort of almost see on the map like how big the actual area is. So when you say it's only 7,000 people, it's like that is not very much. And while they're not xenophobic as much as the former theocracy, they're obviously they still are more insular than some of the other places in the Mwangi Expanse.
Yeah, they're wary of outsiders more. Yes. So.
And they rarely invite guests to come to the city, but they still really enjoy having parties and celebrating amongst themselves, and they are typically trying to sort of figure out how to rebuild and conserve the city, given that there's only 7,000 people in this big city that just everybody vanished in. And due to the fact that Lirgan and Yamasa were huge agricultural producers in the time that now have sunk into the swamp with the Eye of Abednego, there's just actually even some goods that aren't available in this region that people have come to expect and they just can't get anymore. And so therefore certain like traditional dishes have to be substituted or have become rarer, and so they're trying to figure out how to make new foods.
But there's certainly plenty of exploration going on of those abandoned areas of the city, trying to uncover the mysteries of the disappearance and learn what they can from the knowledge that the people that the previous occupants had, while still making a strong point of distancing themselves from them.
That's right. So it says here that modern Lirgeni are pretty world-worn and world-wise due to all of these issues. They may have some Aslanti heritage with their Widow's Peak, but maybe not. Nobody's really sure. The Lirgeni language is considered to be a dead tongue by some scholars, but is still really used by Lirgeni diaspora communities, so it's really not.
I saw another interesting thing too. People who sleep at night have really weird dreams. So most people in Jaha sleep during the day and then conduct their business.
That makes sense. I mean, you don't want to have really weird dreams in Golarion. It's usually not a good thing.
Yeah.
Not a good thing. And so, like, Lirgenis in the Jaha Coalition are really trying to improve themselves and go past the xenophobic issues of the Sauk era. And it's kind of tricky because also Jaha is a reminder of some of the mistakes of the past, but the triumphs of the past, the traditions, and so they kind of have this balance between like respecting and honoring what came before and recognizing that there were some serious issues.
So some of the things that they do to help with that balance is, for example, they look to Ruxi to lead the way in exploring some of these more problematic aspects of the architecture and the history.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Let's see.
Oh, that's a cool ship.
Mm-hmm. It is a skyship that was fully magical that they named the Lirgan's Glory, that was launched out by Lirgan to even be able to go into space using magic because they like space, right? The astronomy thing. Mm-hmm. But something horrible happened and it crashed down into Isker.
Oh no. Yeah. So because of the strong influence of prophecy and the idea of, this is our divinely mandated way of living, that from the old ways. That's one of the things that definitely here in the Age of Lost Omens that the modern people of Jaha push back against, and they still respect and use divination, but they're not going to be like, and then divination is going to predict everything about the future and is going to tell us what we should do.
That's right. It talks a little bit about Lirgani freckles and tattoos, as well as different garments that are commonly worn in Jaha, and then sort of switches over to talk about Jaha Uruksis, who make up about 1/4 of the population of Jaha. And Jaha's Uruksis include some of those, well, I don't remember exactly what the heritage is, but the ones with the sticky pads on their feet that can help them climb, which also helps them deal with the terraces of the city and the fact that it's built up much like those sunken cities we talked about last time in order to sort of, see the stars more easily. And they were previously subjugated, like we said, but everything vanished, and now
including the subjugated Uruksi. Everyone right. from that place vanished. So the Uruksi who are there today are not the ones who experienced that.
That's right. They're typically wetlander lizard folk who traveled along through the Soddenlands as refugees, but occasionally they also let's see. It looks like the Uruksi who are here in Jaha have their own qualms with the Terwa lords that we were talking about before, who did violence with their shamans and warriors and attacked this whole region in the past. And also, which regions were the Terwa lords going after? Obviously they were in the Terra uplands, but I feel like they were trying to conquer one of the other regions.
I don't remember right now.
Whichever one it was, the
we were
Terra
talking
lords
about
whatever
region was right before the Terra uplands.
Yes, so whatever's alphabetically before that's what the Terra lords are attacking. And it could be the Sodlands, right? Because that's where they were escaping to. It would make sense. Just sort of geographically. So there's actually a level 17 lizard folk feat in here called Bone Rider, where, well, you use your ancestors' bones to make a giant fossil form that surrounds you with spirits, and you put a mask of terror on yourself, appearing as a skeletal lizard folk ancestor, twisted in a way that inspires the deepest fears of those who observe you. Oh, hey, NVNG is raiding with a party of 6.
Hi, welcome!
Welcome. So,
we're talking about the city of Jaha in the Mwangi Expanse, reviewing Pathfinder's Lost Omens Mwangi Expanse book.
That's right. But we were on the Bone Rider feat, but we're also talking about the Uruksi lizard folk in Jaha and how they're working together with the Lirgani and Mwangi people who are here. So essentially,
so for the folks who just joined us, this is a city that a city with an ancient and troubled history that believed that whose humans population believed they were destined for greatness and enslaved the Uruksi who lived there. And about a decade ago, a group of human and Uruksi reformers came to try to open up the city, only to discover that everyone who had lived there before had vanished.
Yep.
And so now they are delving into the mysteries and trying to figure out what happened and find ways to use the good parts of the knowledge of the past without picking up some of their predecessors' more troublesome actions.
So let's talk about some of the places in Jaha. The circulation are warrens that are under the city, sarcastically called the circulation of Jaha by the lizard folk. Obviously, like most cities that have warrens deep beneath them, there are catacombs and other dangerous things that are there, and they send search parties through there. The routes shuffle and aren't always the same. There's illusion magic in there. And It's generally a pretty odd place. The Rooksie explorers have started to joke that the dead don't want to be disturbed even if they're polite about it. Because, at least it's not that they're being attacked by undead every time they go somewhere.
You just, wind up finding that you're in a new place that you weren't expecting. Or maybe you were confusingly found your way back at the exit.
So, Linda, let's finally get to those 4 corner fortresses that they built in the city that you were looking forward to since we saw the map.
Yeah, I was wondering, why does it have the 4 corner fortresses? Now that I know more about how the city has many fewer inhabitants than it was originally built for, I'm curious.
It's got the Star Fortress, the Sun Fortress, the Sky Fortress, and the Moon Fortress. Each one is at one of the cardinal sort of northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast directions. So I guess not the cardinal directions, the 4 between cardinal directions.
So they've actually only activated these again in the past year.
Yep. They finally have enough militia to set up in 3 of the fortresses. The Moon Fortress, not so much.
You don't want to necessarily go into the Moon Fortress unless you're particularly brave.
Yep.
It's one of those places that draws some adventurers, but none have yet returned alive. But there's a distinct scent of blood wafting through the air, and the mist and burgundy-tinged mists rise in that part of the city.
Sometimes the dead adventurers do return, where days ago they lived chanting in an unknown tongue. So that's why they don't have a militia in that one. They also have Jahoxi constellations, which looks like it's its own set of astrological constellations that combines Lurgeni and Uruxi star symbols. Oh, that's interesting. I was trying to figure out a list of all of the zodiacs in Pathfinder. I didn't see these, so I'll take a note of these Jahoxi constellations.
Sounds good.
Jabiti, which is not pronounced that way, it is pronounced Jibuyeti.
Thank you, pronunciation guy.
Yes, Jibuyeti. Completely different than how I pronounced it initially. Is the dust market. Just like everywhere seems to have a really cool market, well, so does Jaha. I'm not sure that they really necessarily get the same amount of trade there as Blood Cove, given that they're kind of insular and they don't invite a lot of guests, but it looks like that they sometimes grow enough to venture out into the city and make their own storefront, but it's kind of like the big place. These 7,000 people living in this giant city come to...
Also, it's probably hard for people coming in and being like, why is everyone asleep? Oh, you don't sleep. You don't sleep at night. People who sleep at night get cursed with weird dreams. You sleep in the day here. You sleep in the day here, friend.
The Kewamasi, which is pronounced Kewamasi. Oh!
You got it right! Yay!
Is the most renowned place if you don't live in Jaha and you're like, well, the one thing I know about Jaha is the Kewamasi. Just like if you're like, well, what's in Paris? Well, the Eiffel Tower. So, Kewamasi is what you would know. It's the Shrine of the Beyond.
Why is it called the Shrine of the Beyond?
Well, the thing about it is that basically there's a huge amount of people that are there right now from the community. It's like sort of a central area, but it's called the Shrine of the Beyond because it's got this giant shrine with a terrace and an illusion of divinatory projections of the stars replicating the night sky. So it's like a giant planetarium, illusory planetarium. And that is why it's called the Shrine of the Beyond.
Thank you for enforcing the law of sub-only chat by gifting more subs, Elf.
Yes, Elf is the true enforcer of sub-only chat. Let me give some XP for that. So, that's basically why it's called the Shrine of the Beyond, but it's just such a central and major location that people are just setting up residences and storefronts and just all sorts of things there. So, it's kind of a tourist attraction too, other than the fact that they don't allow very many tourists in there. But there's magical coffee shops and vegan restaurants and anything that you want to find. Bioluminescent fungi shops, you can find them now at the Kewamasi. maybe not the original intent of the Shrine of Beyond, but hey, you know. Also, there's a 21st level rare artifact, Jahan Waystone, that is part of a paired link, and that you can spend a minute envisioning in order to cause the stone to glow and teleport you to the paired stone.
Oh, so you can unerringly teleport to the side of someone else anywhere in the world?
Well, it's trying to envelop the creatures and teleport to the paired stone.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a giant stone. Like, it's not like I'm holding this stone.
Oh, I see. So it's like a giant. I see. So it's an enormous. It's more like It's more like the teleporters that you see in like a lot of stories and games where it's like, oh yes, I go to this one and then whoop, we're over in this one.
And just in case you activate one of these, there's a D12 of where is the other Jaha Waystone that you come out from. Is it a sophisticated small apartment with plumbing and tall ceilings, windows, and doors? Or is it a dormant magical gateway made of rock gathered from the rest of the planets in the solar system?
These and 10 more.
Yep, plus an owl and a cat. Let's move on to Kibwe.
Yes, Kibwe.
So, Kibwe is a mercantile city-state where diverse interests rub shoulders. It really has a much more diverse and less insular than Jaha, although it's still got a lot of humans, 71% humans that are primarily Zenge, but there's definitely there's definitely at the very least a backyard section, as Linda and I found out last night when people were like, oh, go to the backyard section.
We are playing the Slithering, and we're right at the beginning, so no spoilers, please.
Yes, that's right, no spoilers. Other than whatever spoilers I've already seen as the design lead, which is actually not as much as you might think, but it's still some. There's 8% elves, 5% orcs, 5% lizard folk, and 11% other. Plus 71% humans. And there's way more languages here in Kibwe. That's how you can tell how cosmopolitan it is. Elven, Uruksi, Jotun, even Kalish, Kibwani, Kobold, Mwangi, Okatan, Taldane, and Uwani are here. And so there are some pretty major threats to Kibwe, including magical curses and diseases.
Demons and disgruntled ex-slavers.
And demons and disgruntled ex-slavers can be combined in the threat of Bekiar.
They definitely can.
Sometimes worship demons and include disgruntled ex-slavers or disgruntled current slavers.
Yes.
So Kibwe is a major trade hub in the area. It can find items up to 11th level despite only being a 6th level settlement. And 4 important people there are the council representative for the Zenge Trading Alliance, Abayone Moonmei, who does not like providing official writs of deputization to paladins.
That's just in our Slytherin game. I don't know if that's more of how the GM was playing.
Who knows? Maybe she does that in other games.
Maybe she does it in other games
Clatriani Ordic, Bloodman of Bekiar Block. See, I knew there was a Bekiar Block. And former slave trader Darvion Estebar, Lord Magistrate of the East Mwangi Mining Company, and Kosa Et, council representative for White Marks. They have a lot of the same resources as Jaha, except they don't really have the astronomy books, but they do have some more spices and ore, because this area is closer to where some of the mining regions are, as opposed to Jaha, which is kind of more in an area that doesn't have that. You can see the map of Kibwe here.
So you can see there's a large miners' camp region as well.
That's true.
And how prominent of a place the market occupies. In
also, Bekiar Block is a decently sized area. But I suppose if that's Bekiar Block and every other block is primarily Zenge, it's still definitely primarily Zenge. So yeah, the slithering is a thing that happened in Kibwe, and there's a sidebar that says that is true. Now, the City of Watchers, it's got giant walls, there's weird statues there, just, Magnamar has weird statues too. There's a lot of cities in Golarion with weird statues. We also saw in the middle of the jungle in several places were weird statues.
Yeah.
I think just weird statues.
Weird statues are a thing in Golarion.
Yeah. Given that Golarion has a history that's like 5 times longer than Earth's history, or more than that, it makes sense that they've built up their share of weird statues.
Weird statues, and then it's like, okay, well, this is from a 2,000-year-old civilization that was here, and we have no idea what it's doing.
It's much newer than the school of the Mwangi. It's only 2,000 years old. So, yeah.
Yes, it would be odd if there were no statues. You're right, David.
Yeah, no, it really actually would be. So, but they still point out the weird statues, and there's a picture of one of the weird statues here. And the traders in Kibwe come from all over Garund, even as far away as Halamong or Nex or Droon, which is actually quite far south in Garund, where it's the Iruxi Empire down there. They like dinosaurs and being Iruxi. There's scholars from Montambu.
We're interested in the relics from the Shori.
Probably sold by, what do we call them? Those
from
people
the ruins
who
of Ko, yeah.
Yeah, the people who live near the ruins of Ko are probably the ones selling them. Slave trading had been permitted in Backyard Block for generations and is recently prohibited. Not that they're very pleased with this. It's basically free trade, but that doesn't mean that everybody's doing well. And there are business organizations around. We said that the East Mwangi Mining Company's representative is one of the foremost important people in Kibwe. The Aspis Consortium is here too. There's former slave traders here that are grumbling about not being able to do their slavery that they have been doing generationally.
There's a sizable contingent of refugees from Usaro who have come to resettle here.
So historically, it was a trading post among Zenj farmers because it was just a good area, and there were also these giant walls that are supernaturally resilient, and nobody knows why they're here. So I guess historically, the real answer is something happened and nobody knows what it is. Then it was a great trading post.
Yeah, something Holy Zitramba declared it to be their provincial
capital. Well, no, but then that part we know about. Nobody knows why there were the walls. But Zen's traders were like, there are walls. This is a good place to trade. And then, if we remember Holy Zitramba, which is the merely 1 to 2 millennium old empire that still is really old, but is much younger than some of the other things because it's Galarian. They declared it as their provincial capital of this province because they're like, it's got walls. It's great. And then they fell, as we talked about, to the demon-worshipping people who now are filled entirely with tieflings, and the mutually assured destruction between the two of them. Then Kibwe declared itself as an independent city-state, and has been independent since then for millennia, but only a few millennia. It's new. So...
Are we ever going to do a Lost Omens episode where you don't mention the improbably long history of Galarian?
I mean, it's important to think about the history of this city, right? This city has literally been independent and its own city-state for, it would be as if, at the fall of the Roman Empire, someone declared themselves a city-state, and now they still are. And there are some nations that are. This is reasonable, and is also just telling you how ancient that, Kibwe is compared to, say, the Magambia, which is, twice as old as Sumeria or something like that. So you have to put it into perspective. Let's see. So we've got the mysterious wall builders. We've got pillar watchers who kind of just want to look at the statues.
No, the pillar watchers are the statues.
That's what it is.
Although there's a... As with every, statue that looks like the statue that's vaguely shaped like a creature.
People think it's a golem.
People are like, that's a hero as a defender, or just like when you have the adventurers who walk into the dungeon. I do like the trick of putting down minis every time that there's statues and seeing how many PCs will decide to shoot arrows at random statues. But if they have that habit, they may waste their arrows on destroying random pieces of art, but they do also eventually find the actual
That's true.
evil statues.
So basically in Kibwe, merchants just kind of start the day early. In other places, you might have a rooster that wakes everybody up, but in Kibwe, it's merchants who are just if I get out before any reasonable merchant would and start showing my wares and calling out to people, then I'll have an advantage. And so they start sooner.
Yeah, it's also really, really hot there in midday,
Yes.
so people have to take a long break in the middle of the day.
They have like a Kiwe siesta kind of situation where it's like, it's hot. Let's pause.
Yeah, it's dangerous for people to be engaging in manual labor, and nobody's gonna want to be out shopping. So
they literally do sometimes take a nap and are just like, let's peace out. And then at like 3 or 4 after midday, they're going to come out and do a little bit more of the day. And of course, this isn't all the year long, because during fall and winter, there's just torrential downpours. They're cooler.
Yeah, but regardless, you don't want to be out there in the middle of the day. Yep. Oh, hi James Love. Welcome back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a development manager now. That's because I'm looking at more than organized play, but I'm looking at digital adventures as a whole, including the one-shots now.
That's right. And thanks for keeping it a sub-only chat, Alf. All right.
Sub-only chat.
Sub-only chat. Sub-only chat. So anyone who doesn't take the Kiwe siesta in the middle of the day and split the day is seen as being like a weird outsider who doesn't fit in with the culture, even if they have lived in Kiwe the entire time, like their entire life. People always think that they're a little strange and that they aren't fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a food scene. There seems to be a food scene everywhere. If you want to have delicious food that comes from all around and just mixes up and innovates, like the Mwangi Expanse is one place you should go. There's food from across Garund and beyond. Zenj farmers and herders give lower cost contributions to the market that can make certain types of food cheaper. There's a popular dish called atlaka, which incorporates grains, meat, and spices into a hearty porridge that's cooked over low heat. Let's see. So there are people who worship the Pillar Watchers that are constantly around the area.
I really like this sidebar here. There's some scholars who are like far from Kiwe, and the Pillar Watchers are really popular subjects for toys. A lot of kids have like, I've got a little toy Pillar Watcher. And some distant scholars are like, yes, this is an exotic ritual item that is used in the religion in distant Kiwe. And
it's a child's toy.
If they actually come there, it's like, no, it's just a toy based off a statue.
Yep.
I feel like that was written by somebody as a commentary on the tendency of archaeologists to be like, I don't know what this is for.
It must have been religious.
It must have been religious somehow.
Yep.
Yep.
It's always a religious icon, Linda.
Yes.
And the Pillar Watchers are just kind of throughout. A lot of them have some kind of a human and some kind of animal part, like ox or turtle ox. Lovers sometimes come to the turtle ox one in particular, so there's an expression under the turtle ox to mean someone's in love. Some people make an oath to the Pillar Watcher, so there are superstitions involving the Pillar Watchers. It's just that they don't worship children's toys.
Yes.
Which, to be fair, maybe there are cultures that worship children's toys. Like, our culture kind of worships children's toys in some ways. But not in Kiwe.
Yes.
So, in geography, Kiwe's neighborhoods are really kind of... and little enclaves are really kind of split apart in certain ways, sometimes among ethnicities and nationalities. Other than the large Zenj majority, but if people who are not Zenj humans often stick together amongst each other, such as Bekiar Block, which is near the city's western gate. It was where the slave market was before, as we mentioned before. There's Brass Block, which was... a wealthy neighborhood, but when the Aspects Consortium bought several manors at suspiciously low prices and kind of took over, they kind of made sure employees and other working class citizens could afford to live there. I mean, they're still super evil, though. And Bwamandu is a northern neighborhood named after abolitionists who donated it to house former slaves.
There's a question about, like, how does it work that they get things from all over? Isn't Kibwe somewhat hard to get to a remote? I'm not sure exactly how far out it is on the map, but that's something I think is interesting to consider for, like, Galarian as a whole, that you have a world that has magic, that has, I mean, teleportation is uncommon, but it still exists. So, like, what ways might their trade routes and the ways that they handle things be different than the way that they are?
Yeah, let's see, where is Kibwe in the Mwangi Expanse? I know it's definitely in a fairly reasonable, there we go. We've got the Google map type thing. So it's near the eastern side of the Mwangi Expanse. There are two major rivers, one just to the north and one just to the south of Kibwe. The northern one heads to Lake Okota, which is in the center of the Mwangi Expanse, and can also connect you all the way up to through tributaries to, like, Osirian. Then the southern of the two rivers goes all the way down through the Screaming Jungle, can get you to Mizali and some of the more southern areas, and even into, like, southern Garund.
So it looks like that's the answer, via river.
So you go north or south of Kibwe, you get to that river, it's not very far, and the two rivers don't connect, but they each go in one direction, so it's sort of in between those two rivers. And you know what they call a land that is in between two rivers is
Are you about to make a pun?
It's not. No, like it being in between rivers is like Mesopotamia.
Oh.
That's
okay.
what that means, is like a place between rivers.
Oh.
If you're between two rivers, it is generally a good thing for you when it comes to trade.
Oh, you're like sharing an actual fact instead of trolling me with a pun.
Yeah. I know, it's shocking. It's just not the Tigris and Euphrates this time.
That's true.
So there's a big central market. Obviously, it's very important because trade is so important here. See, everyone expected puns, but it's actual what things mean. There's Iwisa Block, which is a bunch of streets where traders come to set up services to the central market, but they can kind of just go to Iwisa Block for a permanent shop if they don't want to go to the central market. Miners camps, because like we said, ore is a factor for them here, and there's actually some mining and miners. Mozimba, which are the lands outside of Kibwe with Zenj farmers and herders, and Mozimba is where a lot of them who live within the city and also work outside of the city might live in Mozimba area.
And the miners camp is an example of what we were talking about before. Like, life is not great for everybody who lives in Kibwe. It's one of those mining operations where people work for, like, company money and are caught in a cycle caught in an unfortunate cycle.
Yep. Stunt Monkey points out being between two rivers can give you extreme humidity, which is also why they have huge amounts of rainfall in Kibwe during certain months. Straggle Block is the poorest neighborhood of Kibwe. At the very southernmost point, it is in between the miners' camp and the Walk of Shrines, and it is a very desperate location. Walk of Shrines is named for the most famous street. It runs through this neighborhood, and it has many churches and shrines, as you might expect. The Walk of Shrines is the shrine place. And then White Marks is a Ekujai elven neighborhood, and few non-elves who agree to follow the way of life of Ekujai elves.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously demons are an issue. They are in like a lot of places, and they are in Kibwe. That's just kind of a thing. We said that already. Some of the smaller enclaves that we mentioned that might be cultural enclaves. There's North Station,
which is, as you might expect, on the south side of the city.
That's correct. Of course. It's at the south end of the city. Well, I mean, because it's the north, probably. It's probably the north end of like some route that goes to the city, and then you're in the city past that point, and it's got a lot of Avistani visitors, and it is connected to the Caden Kalian shrine. There's Taldane being spoken there. Undermoth is an underground network of warrens. See, everybody's got their underground.
Everybody's got it.
In this case, there's a community of kobolds rather than like weird ghosts that change the tunnels. And Aspects Consortium managed to drive away the kobolds when the company changed the neighborhood into Brass Block. Kobolds now live beneath white marks. Let's see. Water Block is an area around the city's northernmost well claimed by a clan of stone giants who have tended the well for generations. And then Wall Shadow basically are some of the few buildings outside the walls that are actually considered to be part of Kibwe. And they're in the shadow of the city walls, but you know what? Gnomes like to live in different places anyway, and there's just a big clan of gnomes that live there, and they serve as scouts, and that's just their situation.
So in terms of government, when Kiba was in its early years, there were all sorts of outside groups of foreign mining interests and other companies that were trying to vie for control. So locals were like, you know what, let's not let these outside investors tear us apart, and established a representative government.
And the representative government has council members who represent different sort of factions and groups within Kibwe. And so, therefore, obviously, some of the most popular members are ones who are skilled orators and are better able to work the political system. So, Abayone Mume represents the Zenj Trading Alliance, but is popular for looking after interests of all Zenj, which I imagine would be a good way to get elected in a city that is 71% human, which are huge majority Zenj, because if you're like, I'll make sure I look after over half of everybody in the city, then over half of everybody in the city likes you.
Yes.
It looks like she's well liked in Mozumba, which is the Zenj farmer area, and is not their representative, and their actual representative is not like that. Meanwhile, the Lord Magistrate of the East Mwangi Mining Company is someone who just researches his speeches a huge amount. He probably has like footnotes that are like, this is from this.
There have been a lot of assassination attempts against him, so many that some people are beginning to suspect that maybe he stages faked assassination attempts against him to prove his strength of his defenses, so that people don't actually try to assassinate him.
Legit. Kosa Et, the Agender Elfweaver 6, represents that White Marks neighborhood with all of the Ekujai elves that live there. And then there's also Masu Abuedoma, who
Cleric of Abadar, who represents everyone who's not part of any other organization. It's interesting to see the phrase notoriously fickle being used to describe a priest of Abadar. But I guess he's actually not a lawful priest of Abadar.
Well, the thing about him is that, first of all, not only is he an alignment that cannot be a cleric of Abadar, so it's a little unclear. But also, the reason he's fickle is not because he doesn't follow the laws, but it's because like, even he doesn't know exactly what it means to be the representative of everyone else.
Yes.
And so, but he's probably trying to follow the mandate of everyone else, but the problem is that everyone else doesn't have like a clear goal.
Yes.
In the same way that being the representative of like the Zenj Trade Alliance, you're like, well, we want to do Zenj trade. So he would be fickle during debates because he's like, well, I'm representing everybody, and that includes who isn't part of this, the free people of Kiba, and that means that I'm supporting this cause this time, but this one this other time. So I think it makes sense that he's fickle, even though he's a cleric of Abadar. The neutral good part is kind of the confusing one. Then there's also The language Kiwani, which shares its root in many languages in the trade tongue of Mwangi. They're unintelligible to one another because of some of the influences and slang that feature in them. But they're very based on a similar root language. And then there's a bunch of cool, like, little places you can go, like the Adayenki Pavilion in the heart of the Central Market.
Lots of social events take place there: prayers, weddings, funerals, council meetings, all sorts of things. If it's a big social event that is at the Center of Society, you might expect it to be hosted there. The Aspis Consortium has a new headquarters.
Yep. You know that there's something going on because people insist that the goose-headed pillar watchers in the area have increased
in number.
And goose-headed, you know that means business is a goose. There's Bloodman Hall and administrative headquarters of Backyard Block. Obviously, it was the major location of the slave trade back when that was a thing. Then there's serious alchemical pollution problems, and therefore there is a neutral good female human farmer who's looking to investigate that problem. The city wells, that's where you get drinking water. East Mwangi Gold Refinery, well, there's a mining company, and now they have a gold refinery. That's part of why they have those giant mines. There's a public granary where they store extra grain in advance in case they, need giant supplies of grain, which you might need. The Road's Gentle End is the name of a kind of hospitality center that's big enough that you can send an entire caravan trade into it. It has high quality food. And
thanks for contributing to Sub Only Chat, Trippy.
Yes. Thanks so much. So it has high quality food and drinks at a reasonable price, but the main thing that's different about
That's a tier 2, love.
Oh. Well, the main thing that's different about it is that they add kind of pretty significant charges for like animal handling, grooming, and like other servicing fees, so that way that's how they make their money, because other than that it's pretty inexpensive and high quality.
So it's kind of like the budget, in some ways similar to like the budget airlines who are like, oh, it's really cheap, but we'll charge you for literally everything.
That's right. And then there's Tiger House. It's an inn with the motto, no masters. Anybody can come except for someone who employs others. If you employ others, you're not allowed.
Yes.
In Tiger House. Even if it's like legit and you're paying them extremely well for honest work, you're not welcome. Mm-hmm. At the end, it's a Tiger House. It's the first rule of Tiger House.
There's no bosses in the Tiger House.
Yes. No one who's the boss of anyone.
Okay, but how does the person who is in charge of Tiger House enter Tiger House?
Well,
because they have employees, right? So therefore, by their own rules, they're banned from their own establishment.
But that's not true, because all of the work is done by a trio of Vanuatu innkeepers who claim descent from Azatas.
I see. So that's how they get around it. That's how they get around it.
Yes.
Fair enough.
There's just three innkeepers, and they don't have employees because they're all owners of Tiger House. Okay, you know what happens in Tiger House stays in Tiger House.
That's true.
That's right.
Fair enough. Today we're going to be continuing our biased reactions to this wonderful book on the city of Mzali.
Mzali is definitely unique. You can even see from the picture, it's the only city that is ruled by an evil mummy, undead child god with sun lasers that he's kind of shooting out of his head there. It's described in the book as nationalist temple metropolis ruled over by an undead sun king of the ancient past. That's pretty accurate. You can see there's like a faded banner of like sun lions that has been like, it's in black, that's over top of the resources. They've got Armor, weapons, magic items, luxury goods, mercenaries, they're pretty militaristic.
Mizali is particularly unwelcoming to outsiders.
Oh, yes.
All non-native Mwangi individuals are banned from the city.
Yep, that's true. Also, their languages are only Mwangi and Mizunu, with 99% humans, 1% other. Their religions are Walkina, the evil mummy child god, and then the three lost sun lions of like the different sun periods, Chohar, Luhar, and Tlehar, are coming somewhat back into vogue because of the because of the first threat to Mizali, the Bright Lions. And when you think of threats, you don't always think of like a good aligned group, but the Bright Lions are rebels, so they're technically a threat to the city government.
Yes.
There's also threats are Karina's undead and Walkina's servants themselves can be a threat to you if you're in the city. Considering Warlock wonders if the 1% other is largely species who can disguise themselves as humans, I wouldn't be surprised, but also if they were some of the rarer ancestries that are very native to the Mwangi Expanse, then the extreme nationalist xenophobia of Mizali might not like trigger on them if Walkina's like, okay, well, I woke up after 10,000 years, I'm free. It's time to take over Mizali again. And then it's like, oh, I remember this ancestry. It's been in the jungles for a while. That can be okay. But if it's an ancestry that, like, Walkina is not good with, then Walkina is going to assume that person's an outsider, maybe. I don't really know.
You can really tell that it's a lawful evil state by some of the descriptions of the people here. You've got Nikra the Voice, the prime speaker of Walkina and arbiter of conflicts,
is a neutral person, diplomat.
But then you've got Themba Sufu the Shadow, the commander of Walkina's secret police force.
Worknesh the Golden Blade,
the High Inquisitor of Walkina and commander of martial forces. Yeah. Yes.
And Zubari the Guiding Ray, High Priest of Walkina and overseer of day-to-day administration of Mizali. Probably shoots rays of sun lasers at people.
You're really keeping going on this sun laser theme.
Yeah, I know.
It's visible in the art.
It's visible in the art. Also, they have the rule of banned outsiders. If you are not a native Mwangi individual, basically you're banned. Even if you do come in, the fearful citizens do not want to engage with you because their secret police might come after them as sympathizers. Mm-hmm. As Mizali has been wont to do to like other Mwangi nations that they feel were sympathizers, which is everybody except them. You get a -4 circumstance penalty to basically all of the charisma-based stuff that you do, and if you get a failure, it's actually a critical failure, and they get more upset with you and just don't like you because you are an outsider. And you can see over there on the map, although it may be somewhat covered by the little button to vote for the poll, that there is there's several important buildings. The Temple of the Deathless Child is that building that's got like this little moat around it in the center of the city. There's a mixed marketplace. There's archives, Well of the Moon, Temple of the Eight Suns, which is a smaller temple, the Sunlit Inn, and Ryer's Garments.
We'll talk more about those here in a minute.
All right. So, basically, there used to be a huge number of shrines in Mizali, and there still are. Walkina's faithful tried to destroy or, like, change to be Walkina-based, like many of the shrines in this city, but
there were literally thousands more that were too dangerous or hidden to reach.
Yep.
It is a crime to enter these places that have not been converted back to Walkina or destroyed.
Yep. So yeah, basically the reason why it has so many shrines is that like ages ago, we don't know exactly how long ago that was because well there are literal ages in the setting, and one of the ages is Age of Lost Omens that just recently happened, but in some age that was ages ago, there was a council that overthrew the monarchy and the Sun Kings, the godlike Sun Kings, which, you know, are a type of thing in Earth that a lot of cultures had. And then the empire crumbled because the council did not hold it together, and the city was basically nearly abandoned. But then Walkina's tomb was discovered, and after 10,000 years, he was free. It may not have been 10,000 years. And basically, it coincided with the prophecy about Mzali's return to greatness, but it was after the Age of Lost Omens, so who knows if that's actually the prophecy being fulfilled or subverted. And they were like, look, everybody, it's Walkina.
Yeah, well, there was an army of Sargavan colonists that came in to invade, and then at that precise moment, Walkina awoke it, and someone fired down from the sky and burned all of the raiders to a crisp.
You could see a sun laser doing that in this picture.
Yes.
That's what Walkina's all about. And basically, it's the totalitarian government of the undead Walkina. And the population has grown because Walkina wants to unite the Expanse, remove colonizers, get rid of sympathizers, and basically, if you trade with non-Mwangi, which like everybody does except for Mzali, then Walkina is going to severely punish you. If you question him, Walkina is going to severely punish you.
Yes.
If you traffic with outsiders without his explicit seal, like his diplomat, Walkina's gonna severely punish you.
That's kind of the deal there.
And a quick death is the best that you can get if you do any of those things. Like, that's considered a merciful reward.
Yes. So, people certainly here live in fear of their god ruler's displeasure. The Bright Lions, though, are still willing to rise up as an insurgent group working in the shadows here, with some support from folks in Vidrian.
Mm-hmm. And
Walkina has certainly turned his elite jackal guards on the task of trying to root out and destroy the Bright Lions.
That's right. And if you were wondering what are Karinas in the threats, they are vicious birds. But there are still explorers who are going to sneak in there just because there's so many relics and treasures of the Lost Ages in these random tombs and shrines that are in the city. And they're trying to find a way to defeat Walkina.
David makes a good point. If you've got to seal the way undead, then the story demands that they escape at some point.
Well, nobody knew he was an undead at first. They thought it was just an inanimate mummy. Like, look, come see the old child god. But then he just got so fed up that he reanimated in Sun Lazord. So yeah, Mzali is bustling now from the point where it had been nearly a dead city before Walkina was found, but Walkina's consolidated control, and it is kind of divided because there are warrior priests who hunt down dissenters and secret police who do that too, and they are basically nobles, while everyone else
is just trying to avoid attention.
Just let's not do... And then the rebels are hiding among, and those are who they're trying to seek out. So it's not always a great situation, and the commoners, they want to avoid attention, but they don't want to be too surreptitious, because then the secret police will think that they're rebels. So they'll anytime someone comes, they'll give them a bright smile, because the secret police might think that they're disloyal if they don't do that. It's like, well, this merchant or shopkeeper wasn't smiling. They must be a bright lion. So, which of course means the Bright Lions are going to do that too, because why not?
Yeah.
It used to be culturally diverse, but Walkina has enforced strict adherence to ancient Mzali traditions. And so it's not. Let's talk about their food, because the food scene is very important in all of these cities. So they can only take food that is sourced locally. It is not diverse like these other cities. They're going to get meat with spices, because they had spices as one of their things. Bread and chickpeas. And that is what a huge percentage of all of their dishes are made out of. And the dining is usually even restricted to local dishes and recipes that have been created in Mzali, although family cooks can come up with their own combinations of food, potentially from other places in their homes, and if we go to a public place, it's always going to be like the Mzali specialties.
You can also recognize, based on the way people dressed about their social class, there's certain colors that are restricted to priests or members of the council.
Mm-hmm. And and
jewelry, like they also use like have certain traditions around what jewelry people are allowed to wear, how much, and what types in order to denote social class and status.
Even their workday is based around surveillance. So at dawn, Walkina takes his first steps out of the temple, and everyone is expected to toil diligently at that point in time. At noon, there are giant gongs, and everyone is required to stop for prayer. And they stand outside, and their heads are bowed until a second gong tells them they go back to work. It usually is only a few minutes.
But if Walkina is angry, it's like, it seems the faith is waning. He may make people stand out there for up to an hour.
Under the heat of the midday sun with their heads bowed. If you have special permissions, then that's the only way you can stay outside of your home at dusk, where you have to remain there until dawn.
Because priests are like, little honest work can be done when Walkina isn't watching you.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, so they still have great artisans here in Mzali, and there's only one official holiday, which is the anniversary of Lazor Day, when Walkina woke up and Lazored the colonists, which is Day of the Cleansing Sun, or Cleansing for short. And there's a big celebration in each time, except that each year the celebration is growing slightly less fervent, and Walkina has begun to take notice. There's also some unofficial celebrations.
One of the unofficial celebrations that nobody would dare speak out loud is the few days when the rain is heavy enough to block out the sun, and Walkina stays inside and doesn't like surveil everybody.
Well, he can't do his lasers.
Yes.
When there's not the sun. I'm assuming that, like, it doesn't say this here, but I'm assuming that one of the reasons he comes out when the sun is out is because he's defended and can use his strongest attacks, and so he's probably like behind layers of defenses when he can't do that, I guess.
Yeah, I imagine too. Plus, just like with his theming of being like, I am a sun god, etc.
Yeah, so it does say the thing I was saying before, which is some of Walkina's fiercest opposition feigns faith better than anyone. And are among the people that are the least suspected by the secret police.
As for, like, people who are coming to and from Mzali, generally people who leave don't return because they're going to be under huge amounts of scrutiny of having been tainted by contact with outsiders. And even those who are allowed to enter, if they're like, they're a diplomat or whatever, they're probably going to be escorted by a priest the entire time and severely limited in where they can go.
It's kind of like on Earth, like, there's totalitarian nations like that, right? Where they'll let like an academic or a reporter come into like North Korea, but when they do, they're gonna give you a guide who is gonna
like,
talk up
I'm going to take you to the temple. And it's like no contact with the citizens.
Yep, and they're gonna take you specifically to places that are staged, probably, and that's probably what's gonna happen in Mzali too. So. Yeah, the people of Mzali, let's see if we can find out about those 1% in this section. So they're descended from various groups, generally of humans. It doesn't really say actually who the 1% that are not humans are. Diversity in thoughts and beliefs is forbidden. Some people still believe that Walkina is a hero because of the fact that he lazored the Sargavans. Yeah, I'm not seeing any explicit indication of who the 1% non-humans are. I still think it's likely that it is like traditional Mwangi ancestries that were from around that area. So,
and in terms of religion, Walkina allows people to pay some degree of respect to gods from agriculture, light, or similar things, as long as they're not darkness themed. And as long as they hold Walkina to be the most important among all gods.
David says maybe the 1% is undead. It is true that Walkina is raising undead servants.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
He keeps them out of the streets because it's like he knows that it's gauche to have undead servants just mixing among people. It might make them antsy, but they guard, like, they're used as guardians. And they can still become a danger to people, depending on what's going to happen. There's also night haunts that come out, and then Walkina is not necessarily doing anything to protect people during the night.
There's the Karina birds.
Yep, which are in the bestiary, so we'll get to them.
Yeah, but you know there is, I guess, some truth to the tendency or reason behind the tendency of the secret police and such to walk around at night, because it is true that like Bright Lions and other people who are trying to avoid Walkina's gaze do come out more at night.
I mean, they do.
It's like, well, the secret police are less dangerous than Walkina, so.
Yep. And so, yeah, that's basically the situation in Mazzali overall. Walkina, there's some info on Walkina. Basically, a descendant of the sun gods of Mazzali, mortal descendant, but not completely mortal. Has divine blood and gained his own divinity when he returned to life, and so he is a permanently physical deity, and is the child god, which is undead, resurrected, and ascended, and is entrenched in the mortal world. So, like, what Razmir says he is, a living god, or that kind of is what Walkina is.
He's very, like, he never, once he sets his mind to something, he never changes his mind, and he still is trapped in sort of his childlike ways in some ways. He's brilliant, but he is also jealous and temperamental and very emotionally immature and cruel.
You know how kids sometimes take a magnifying glass and use it to burn ants? Well, you're the ants to Walkina. And his special punishment, the punishment of 7 angry suns, involves 6 unique tortures, and then being burned at the stake by sunlight focused through several glass lenses of Walkina's own design, aka sun lasers.
Yes. More sun lasers.
Yep.
Speaking of don't anger Walkina, don't anger Walkina.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And he seems capricious because this rising and setting of the sun changes his mood. Like, at dawn, he seems very, very happy and easy for people to get along with. He walks around
performing miracles for the faithful.
Yep.
Around noon, he is more analytical and performs a lot of the political tasks that need to happen. But his power reigns around sunset, and that's when he's most dangerous.
Yes, and he kind of shrivels up. And yeah, so basically, Walkina's court is extremely xenophobic. They're very loyal, but it doesn't mean that they agree with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, the head of the secret police is distrusted by many of Walkina's other servitors, whereas the high priest is the head of the council because it's a theocracy.
And Austin has to clean up the messes, but the two of them are careful just to verbally disagree with each other, because if they both know that they can't afford to make Walkina angry in any way by causing problems.
That's right. So, about the Bright Lions, Sihar, who you can find in Lost Omens Legends, is the head of the Bright Lions, seeking to overthrow Walkina. They spread knowledge of the former sun gods, and they have layers in the abandoned district. And there's an agent who gathers information from his restaurant, the Golden Mouse. And they definitely get into fights and shed the blood of other people from Mazzali. But it's mostly cloak and dagger, war of attrition, because they know if they fight directly, they'll get lasered.
Mm-hmm. Well, it includes another character introduced in Legends, Zor Bennick. The halfling who's leading those efforts as a spy master from outside of the city.
Yep. If you were wondering what is Mizunu, that is an old language from the Mazzali Empire back when it was a giant empire, and Walkina knows it because that's what he like woke up speaking and is telling people that it is the unadulterated version, whereas Mwangi trade tongue is used to communicate with outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
And so wants this official language to shift back to the historical one, and you can begrudgingly use Mwangi to talk to outsiders. So, in terms of some places in Mazzali, there's a mixed... We saw on the map the mixed marketplace, which is... got food, although it's going to be mostly the traditional Mazzali food. There are vendors, and it's a pretty bustling area. There's a lot of artisanship in Mazzali, and so there are a lot of things to sell. Mazzali archives have information that are mainly records.
There's all sorts of interesting history that you can read, but as you might...
about Walkina!
But as you might imagine, it's quite censored in that regard. It's like lots of history about Walkina.
Yep. And it's sometimes referred to as the scribrary because the rumors are that the head archivist can find you a book that lets you scry on people. There's also the necropolis, which there are many stories about the danger from plague birds and ghouls and all sorts of horrible things in there.
As well as getting arrested for going into places you're not supposed to be in.
Yep. There is a magic oath, which is a contract using the contract rules from Lost Omens Legends that you can swear to Walkina that it's only level 9 and you can get fire and mental resistance 5, and when you die you rise as a zombie. It's great. You then become under Walkina's control and your alignment changes to evil. As one action once a day, you can get a +1 status bonus to will saves and choose a weapon or item striking, deal 1d6 extra fire damage for the next minute. I mean, who doesn't like that?
If you get to stay a zombie forever until you're destroyed or until Mazzali is entirely purged of foreigners.
Then your duty is fulfilled. Yeah, I mean, that's a great oath. I mean, everybody should swear this oath to Walkina. Who doesn't want fire and mental resistance and 1d6 extra fire damage? Clearly. And extra life. You got like a 1-up.
Yeah,
as a zombie under Walkina's control.
This message is sponsored by Walkina.
If your alignment was already evil, it doesn't even change to a different alignment. Mm-hmm. Alright, so what was Ryer's garments? That was like the big question on the map because it seemed like less important than the other things that were on the map. So it is a wide assortment of clothing in Mazzali style. On rare evenings, you can hear a weird melody coming from there.
But nobody's dared to investigate too much because you don't poke into things.
Not in Mazzali.
Not into Mazzali.
You probably aren't even able to come out at night.
Yes.
So, there's Salsi's home, who is a random level 1 human adolescent, but basically it's a repurposed shrine that people have seen a young girl, almost always alone, who causes no trouble, participates in prayer, and returns indoors before dusk as expected. But no one has ever seen her, like, parents or guardians. And
Walkina comes to that house from time to time without his retinue or guards.
Yes. Unclear.
Yes.
There's the Shrine of the Eclipse.
Is she just, like, a friend of that where Walkina just wants to act like a child and play with this person, or is there something a lot bigger going on with her and that's just what appears to be going on? Who knows?
Unclear. She sometimes talks to herself with half of a conversation. Maybe it's magically talking to Walkina. Mm-hmm. So the Shrine of the Eclipse is one of those shrines that supposedly foretold the coming of Walkina, and the tablets that are in there might be fakes that were created by Walkina's clergy and then planted there so that you would say, oh, look, Walkina's great. But it's got a lot of birds, the Karina birds, and is very dangerous. There's the Sunlit Inn, which was once a partially collapsed temple, like a lot of repurposed buildings, and now it's an inn. And it is modestly sized, but one of its specialties is rooms that are lit intensely by the sun during the day and then reveal a peaceful starry sky at night. They're called night rooms.
Mm-hmm. The Temple of the Eight Suns is an old temple. but it's one of those ones where that's fallen into disrepair that people aren't allowed to go explore.
Yep. The Temple of the Deathless Child, which is that big one that had the giant moat, is Walkina's temple, and it is heavily guarded by Ochiang, Strength of the Light, who is a 15th level zombie human guardian who swore that oath and came back as a zombie. She apparently killed 200 Northerners in a battle to defend Mizali, fell in battle, and then came back as a zombie because she took that oath. See, it's so useful. Wakina's inner circle could also come into the temple, and those are those people we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Well of the Moon? It was a well that people thought was dried up, but the Bright Lions guard the well. In general,
they're trying to figure out what the meaning of the inscriptions and such on the wall are. They figured out that it's dedicated to the old sun gods.
Yep, it's another mystery. There's a lot of adventure potential at Mizali.
Yes, for sure.
So let's move on to Nantambu. Nantambu is a much nicer place than Mizali. I promise.
For sure. It's a neutral, good city.
It is. It's colorful and cheerful city-state,
boasting
Galarian's oldest magical academy.
This is the home of the Magambia.
Every week when I say, "Oh, this was only 2,000 years old," that's much younger than the Magambia. Well, this is the Magambia's home, and so that's why it's Galarian's oldest magical academy.
As you might expect, it's easy to find spellcasting services of up to 13th level here.
From the Magambia.
You can find even higher level ones. You just have to take some time to do some work and provide a sizable donation.
Yep.
To the academy.
Even though it's only 10th level.
The major threat here is magical accidents.
Whoops.
You've got quite a huge number of spellcasters gathered together at one place.
And they're students, and you know students cause magical accidents.
Yeah, you do.
So they've got all sorts of religions and languages, and they're still 80% human, but they've got 4% halflings, 3% elves, 2% Amurans, 2% Uruxi, and 9% other. You've got Luchomo, the head of the council. You've got Siko, the council representative from the Glassmakers Guild. High Sun Mage Oyamba, who is the master of the Magambia, and Ebele, who is a level 6 restaurateur. Obviously, books and lore are one of the resources here, but they do have ships and some technology in addition to all sorts of other things because, well, it's a pretty popular location. We can see the picture of one of the, I guess, canals. Like, there's a ton of these canals that are throughout the city. In like a spoked wheel that you can see on the map, plus heading out in every direction towards, what would that body of water be up there? I do not remember exactly where Nantambu is. Maybe it will say.
Yes.
I know
vaguely
where it is.
It's nestled at a bend in the
Vanji River.
Okay,
that's what it is.
Yep.
So that would be the Vanji River up there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, basically, when it comes to Nantambu, there's all sorts of people who live there. You could even find planar scions in there.
Mm-hmm. It was founded a long, long time ago by old Mage Jatempe himself to be a seat of learning.
Yep. Making it like one of the oldest here, including like ruined cities that are like, oh, these were founded a long time ago and got ruined.
It doesn't have a standing army. It has a large number of diplomatically negotiated treaties with its neighbors.
It looks like most of the humans here are Zenge, but there's still about half as many Bonawat, so it's not like super ridiculously majority Zenge, and there's some Mauxi as well. So, while they don't have a standing army, they do have Tempest Sun Mages, which are one of the branches of the Magambia, and the Tempest Sun Mages are the ones who are defenders and who value courage as as sort of their most important virtue, and they have never let anyone within 20 miles of the city who was a foe to the city. Like, any armies or that are like, let's go after Nantambu. They've got a magic academy. This is a good place to loot. Has not even gotten it within a 20-mile radius. So, they don't need a steady army.
Fair enough.
It's like, we've got an army. Oh, yeah? We've got a Magambia.
Yes. And the Magambia attracts students from all over the world, across the Mwangi Expanse and beyond. And you can find those students all throughout the city. It's not like they're like, you must stay on campus while you're doing your instructions.
I mean, it's a very open campus as well, and it's a school that believes in teaching by like going out and not being insular. It's definitely not an ivory tower.
Yeah. And the culture has a very strong community focus, making sure that, everybody has food, clean water, a safe place to sleep, and nobody, there isn't really, that it's, obviously it's not like a completely equal society or whatever, but everybody's basic needs are taken care of so that they can focus on other pursuits.
That's right. This time, I'm sometimes saying facts that are just, like, not even present in the text, because normally it's like, I read this for a design lead pass, but having written the academia article for Magambia, I know some additional information here. We're in the one that I know. So, yeah, the Magambia is definitely doing a lot to help the city. Everyone believes about community. In fact, the perquisite, which is one of the things that a student in Magambia must complete, where they go and they help people around in different areas, it's interesting that it's called the perquisite. It's not called a prerequisite. So it's like it's considered to be a benefit to you that you go out and help other people. Basically, in Nantambu, unlike in Mzali, they start before dawn. But like some of the other cities that we were looking at, and they fire up sourdough, and fishers come out to cast their nets, and they have breakfast. Children head to their lessons, which may be at the Magambia. There's all sorts of things that just happen pretty early. They get an early start to the day.
You've got all sorts of the arts certainly thrive here. You've got street musicians, performers, theaters, music houses, all sorts of competitions sponsored by guilds.
Yep.
For people to show off their crafts.
Yep.
Earn prizes and make names for themselves.
Whereas dinners are actually usually kind of smaller, where you kind of graze on a small amount of finger foods or small cups of stew. And there's 2 seasons here prominently, and they are very similar to the seasons of Kibwe. There's the wintry rainy season, and
where it storms basically the entire day long.
Oh yes, but it's only 3 months. And then the second season is not the wintry rainy season.
Yes, it's the spring.
Yep.
And the season, the spring and the growing season.
Yep, but it lasts through everything except the winter as well, because you've got spring and summer and autumn, and it's all not 20 hours of rain, so you get people out and about, and there's all sorts of things going on, but when it's raining 20 hours a day, it's a little bit different. And people go indoors during that time. So
as you might imagine, given the presence of the Magambia, there's a lot of magical conveniences that people benefit from. There's magical refrigeration in a lot of homes. There's
magical healing.
There are magic lights that magically repel bugs, things like that. Primal magic that keeps the crops healthy.
And they basically, if you think about the fact that it literally has no military, right? So every nation except for them has to fund a military. It's expensive. It takes a significant percentage of your workforce. You then have to feed them and be able to deploy them. And you don't in Nantambu, and they use basically all of that money for additional public works.
Yes.
Because the Tempest Sun Mages are so ridiculous that no one gets within 20 miles.
Go around cleaning the city with cantrips.
Yep. So there's tons of artisans, there's tons of performers, and all sorts of things that are in there. There's so many different deities, and they don't really revere any particular deities, and they don't shun or forbid.
But they do
even like really evil deities.
But they do frown upon like actively evangelizing.
Yes. The one thing they want is you to have a personal choice in your deity, and that means you don't go in and like harass people towards your deity.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's tons of different temples. And the biggest one is the Hall of Mazlude, but there's still a ton of temples of everything else. Maybe not some of the really evil deities, but they technically don't stop you from worshiping them. Just don't like do lots of really evil stuff. Or Tempest Sun mages will not look kindly on that, I'm sure.
They've got a broad tradition of leaving an empty seat. This goes all the way from people's dinner tables up to the city council, and the rule of that is that only strangers are allowed to sit in these empty seats.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a seat for strangers in need.
That's right. They have lots of boats because I mean you saw the canals, right? And it's on the river. There's also racing boats. And they definitely have amateur races and professional races of boats. That's something they like to do. And the most widely attended race is the first regatta of any spring season, which has a special route that goes through every neighborhood so that people can see the regatta. And then there's a giant parade. People are like, yay, it's not so rainy that it's raining 20 hours a day.
And generally, education starts in open-air courtyards called child gardens for young children. Then older children learn skills like reading and writing and counting and handling money. Mm-hmm. And then when people reach the age of 13, that's when they go into an apprenticeship.
That's right. Which could last until they are 33, depending on what they are doing. But sometimes they are considered a master at 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so academy life is very important because of the Mogambia. So there are study groups that are all actually, in fact, alcohol samplings. I mean, that sometimes happens. And there's certain alcohol that have become so associated with students at the Mogambia, residents cheekily refer to it as Jitembe juice.
So, Nintambu has a ruling council of 11, which is taken its guidance from Old Mage Jitembe and the 10 Magic Warriors.
Yes.
There's
like one Jitembe who's in charge.
There's the head of the council. Then there are counselors at large who are elected by the citizens, and then representatives from the major trade organizations.
And there's 5 and 5.
Oh, Jitembe. Luis is saying Jitembe juice came to be during Dev. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did. But
that sounds like one of those things that, like, when it first came out of somebody's mouth, they thought it was a joke, and then they realized it was brilliant, and then it went into writing.
So there are 5 and 5 for the citizens and the trade groups, and they serve terms of 5 years. They can't serve more than 2 consecutive terms, which means 10, like the 10 Magic Warriors. And what that means is if there's ever an issue where, like, the trade organizations are like, well, this obviously is better for us, and the people who represent the citizens are like, well, this obviously is better for the citizens, then, and you get a deadlock in that way, then the, presumably the head of the council is the 11th person so that you can wind up breaking that. It looks like when they're voting, any citizen who can answer 3 basic questions in their native tongue is given a pouch of colored beads in order to vote for the at-large seats that are for the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And the candidate with the most votes is elected as the head of the council. Which also means that the head of the council is also technically a councilor at large. So they probably, if there's ever something where the citizens and the trade organizations disagreed, like entirely on those lines, the citizens probably win. Also, guild councilors usually handle criminal cases, while elected councilors handle civil cases, but not always.
And it talks here about some of the members of the governing council. The current head of council, Luchomo. Siko, the Glassmakers Guild's appointed representative.
Mm-hmm. Gugulethu, who is the appointee for Fish and Farm Federation. Enosha represents Merchants and Traders Consortium. Oethu, who is a boatwright, and is from the Woodworkers Alliance. Nobomi was appointed from the Millers and Bakers Collective. Mongameli, the only non-human, is an agender halfling restaurateur. Thuba is a journeyman from the Glassblowers Guild. Koezi, who has taught many of Nantambu's children and parents, so it's probably an at-large position. Asanda, the city's treasurer until being elected to the council.
You can see art of these people here too.
Yep.
Look at Uethu's beard. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so Nantambu has some clockworks. They're not like as ridiculously associated with clockworks as certain other cities, but they've got some, as you can see in this picture, because of
from,
the plane of Axis.
Yes.
Yep. And it's often in the form of water clocks and orreries rather than like some of the like more ridiculous clockwork that you see in some other places, but they've definitely got them. And the main person who does these wooden clockworks is Sifiso, the 11th member of the council, who is a master woodcarver.
Is that Sifiso there?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
It doesn't say Sifiso, but I think so. So yeah, let's talk about the Magambia, which is like the elephant, the storyteller, magic warrior in the room.
Yes.
When it comes to Nantambu. So basically, it was formed in the village of Nantambu by Old Mage Jitembe after he gathered his 10 magic warriors, and this was a ridiculously long time ago. And they made 10 buildings for the Magambia, one for each of the magic warriors.
Our video froze again.
Oh.
Looks like our camera gave out.
There we have it. The 10 magic warriors each had their own buildings, and Black Heron kind of pushed the students to grow and accomplish more things, but turned on Old Mage Jitembe and left. And at that point, Old Mage Jitembe appointed Learned Ones, who were 5 people who would run the college. And then, of course, as everyone knows,
Luis, is Mwangi a word?
I don't know. I think it could be a word. So, basically, the Learned Ones continue to run the place, and they do not lead the town, even though obviously they could, because they literally, the Tempest Sun Mages, replaced the military.
Oh, Mwangish.
Mwangishly. Okay, well, we'll Mwangishly expand. So, yeah, Magambia is obviously the oldest magic university in the Inner Sea and probably the world, because it's very old. It has taught students to adapt to life in Nantambu. It is a very much a like non-bounded school where you go to all sorts of different places. It's not just like a small campus, like we said before. And candidates sometimes travel to Nantambu and present themselves to the Magambia, but some Magambians go throughout the Mwangi Expanse to identify students as well, so you can get there from either direction. And basically, you gotta complete your perquisite, which I mentioned before, which is for your first 5 seasons or until you pass your first series of tests. And so you go through public service at that point in time. And then once you've reached that point, then you continue onwards and are accepted as attendants. You choose a branch in the Magambia, which is one of the 5 branches I mentioned before, like the Tempest Sun Mages, each of which has a different one, like a very different like kind of virtue and quality that they believe is important. And then you can continue from there to even higher ranks. But there's not really like an official point in time where they officially say this is when you have to graduate, or like this is when your study is at an end. You just maybe you might stay and become an instructor. Obviously, there is an adventure path out right now, Strength of Thousands, where you can become a member, a student at the Magambia, and grow into a position as an instructor as well.
I like one of the other details on that page that students have a string of beads that represents the sponsors at the Magambia, and one of them could be broken to summon like a full-fledged Magambian who's like really skilled, so that if they run into trouble, then they know that they can summon help.
Yep.
It also identifies them in case they're causing trouble.
Yep, and a citizen can then break it and summon their like a teacher to come after them. Like, it's super expensive to do that, but they obviously, in a city with these students who have all this magic power, it definitely puts the citizens' minds at ease. And even just having it's not that expensive. Using them consistently is expensive.
And as it says here, like, they very rarely actually get used, but it's more of a
Yep.
a deterrent to trouble from both directions.
So the language of Zanba, which is one of the languages here, is an ancient language, and it sounds archaic to most other Mwangi natives and shares its roots with their tongues, but scholars believe Zanba is from a language from which many of the other languages were derived. So when it comes to Nantambu, there's a lot of locations that are around. So there's one place known as the Battlefield, and now even though the Tempest Sun Mages have stopped any enemies from coming within 20 miles, the Battlefield is a mile or so outside the city limits, and it is basically a burial site of the first force that ever sought to invade Nantambu, which made camp one night, prepared to attack the following morning, and then overnight all of them died. This was so early on, it was before the Tempest Sun Mages could keep people 20 miles away. It was like, it was just a village. And so that is the Battlefield. You could see it on the map. It was like a mile out. It wasn't really like in the city.
Seems like we're having a little bit of... Okay, I see.
What? Giraffes? Are we having giraffe issues?
No, it's okay now.
Okay. We need to see the giraffes. Alright, so there's the Black Crown Crane, which is like in the center of the entertainment district, and is a major place to see and be seen. And there may be nefarious dealings by Ebele, the owner of Black Crown Crane. Nobody's really entirely sure what's going on there. The Carnivorous Gardens, which have plants and vines, and looks kind of like a lush jungle because it's filled with carnivorous plants. And it is a safe and peaceful place. Yeah. Not one guest nibbled, says the tour guide and caretaker, who's a half-orc botanist.
Yeah, most of the carnivorous plants here couldn't eat anything larger than a frog. Most of them.
Most. What is that thing that's like got a map of the Mwangi Expanse inside of all those pillars? I guess we'll see it soon.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Civic League Boathouse, obviously we said there were lots of boats and there's lots of racing, and the Civic League Boathouse and Repair Facility is a place that holds equipment owned and maintained by the city. There's the dance courts, where Nantamians of all ages listen to music and dance, and young and unmarried especially head to the dance courts to see and be seen.
Is that the central dance floor? From most of the courts are comprised of a central dance floor with a small stage?
I don't think so, because look, it's got a map of the Mwangi Expanse inside of these like elemental pillars. I don't think that's the central dance floor. Then there's Drinking Chocolate, which has an actual recipe. It's been play tested, and some people have made it. Firepot's Forge, an alchemist shop that's run by Firepot Ubanu, who's a pyrochemist. I'm sure it's safe, guys. There's specialty weapons, decorative and ceremonial worship. Goanna's Carvings. It's got a halfling woodcarver there. The Last Chance Shop, which is basically one of the dock's few permanent buildings, which are run by the same family for generations. It's kind of a ramshackle place where someone doesn't want to leave the city with an item in cargo. And
or if they can't find what they're looking for anywhere else,
you can just go to the last chance shop just to check.
Yeah, their prices are expensive and they don't give you much for what you're selling. But if you can't figure out a deal anywhere else, that's where you can go.
The most popular pets are tropical birds, tree pangolins, monkeys, and fantastical insects. But there are also meerkats, bush babies, aardvarks, aardwolves, foxes, and civet cats, as well as small jungle cats and
you can find
small
those
elementals.
At Oba's Wondrous Creatures, the exotic pet shop.
Also, some people like to keep porcupines, honey badgers, and red hogs, but they've been banned from Nantamu streets after one too many incidents. That's right, Oba is the exotic pet shop. There's also the spotted hyena, which is basically a stable with every rideable animal imaginable, even lions, giraffes, hyenas, and zebras. That's a lot of animals. So I think it never told us what that, like, elemental pillar thing with the map of the Mwangi Expanse is. I'm sure it's cool. Let's move on to Osibu.
Yes.
We still have a little bit of time for Osibu. It is shorter than any of the other sections that we've done so far. That is because it is a secretive paradise built around a mysterious and sinister well, which is actually just a really cool place to go. But
is that a typo there? Dimari DG, True Neutral Arboreal Nature Speaker 25?
No. I can assure you it's not. I have information that indicates that is no mistake.
I didn't know
Titanic and ancient arboreal guardian.
I didn't know above 20 was possible.
What do you mean? What about Tree Razor's level 25?
Oh yeah, I guess it's not like a character level, so, and a class.
This is an arboreal.
Right, so right, of course.
Dimari DG is like a giant tree.
Yes, that's true.
Like a gargantuan kaiju tree that is level 25.
That's true.
There's also Umanja Jinga, who is a female halfling seer who is the Oracle of the Honored. Their threats are hostile jungle flora and fauna and the Nemesis Well. And they're 98% humans, 2% other, some of which are halflings and elves and arboreals. And fae, probably, with Sylvan.
Yes. Despite being a 9th level settlement, you can find spellcasting services up to 7th level and magic items up to 13th level if it's primal, because there's a lot of primal magic going on here.
That sure is true. So you can see this is also a circular city with the Nemesis Well in the middle. There's a Bazaar of Favors, the Return, the Conservatory of Ever, and the Twice Honored Woman. And there's a river that goes through Osibu. Also, the Pathfinder Daron Malkarian was a guest in Osibu who pieced together the trail to the city from the accounts of Dervin Guest, one of the most legendary Pathfinders, and did not honor his promises of secrecy to the city and said searched to escape and publish his findings. So basically the idea is the Screaming Jungle is a very dangerous place because it's screaming, and therefore there are many secrets that people have not found because you don't want to go into the Screaming Jungle. One of them, best kept secret, is Osibu, which is a secret paradisical golden city.
It appears on very few maps.
Yep.
The few who made it there were once welcomed here and had to undergo a GS to bind them to secrecy upon the departure. But after Darren Melkarian jumped into the Nemesis Well in an attempt to run off with his findings, the city has been a lot less trusting of outsiders.
That's right. Because they realize that outsiders are eventually going to do ridiculous stuff to try to reveal their secrets. They've kept a much closer watch. The Nemesis Well sits in the center of the city and is guarded by Dimari DG, an ancient arboreal that witnessed Earthfall with his own eyes. So still, like, not necessarily as ancient as the Magambia, but is still, like, up there, and he may be, because we don't know if Earthfall was like, oh yes, Earthfall was something that I witnessed in my middle years, or something like that. So, yeah, he is generally very, very, very powerful, but he's still worried that the Nemesis Well, which whispers promises to Osibu's citizenry is going to be beyond his ability to stop.
So part of the way that people do things here is that when people are young, they can go travel the world and see more what things are like, and then bring back news of what it's like out there to when they return.
Yep. So they're very lucky that someone doesn't, like, when they travel the world when they're young, like, get too drunk and boast about being from a golden city. Or maybe they do and no one believes them, and that just makes rumors about Osibu. So, basically, it is a very threatened paradise. The roads are made of gold, or at least gilded, and there's fruit and nectar and all sorts of things here. Also, there's a pronunciation guide, unlike in any of the other sections, so we can be sure that we pronounce things correctly here. And basically, everything is, like, very open and visible and shared, and there are very few private aspects. So therefore, they have a saying: "Out of mind, into soil." When you speak or show something for the community, it can be built upon by others. There's all sorts of great stuff. And there's plants, and there's animals, and the twice honored women of Osibu are have a ton of druidic power. That's why we're talking about primal magic being higher level than everything else here. Even predatory creatures are docile with a friendly temper.
There's a strong connection to plants here. In particular, people have all sorts of ancient, otherwise lost knowledge about health and wellness, and they are universally vegetarian as well.
I'm sure some of that 2% other is leshies.
I'm sure it is.
But there's still unease, even though everyone's, like, super generous. And you saw in the pictures they have, like, a very interesting silver hair and kind of freckles on their skin. The problem is that it was basically a utopia, but when the Pathfinder escaped, it kind of is paranoid, and they've changed their strategy for election of the elder wise women, and the menaces beneath the Nemesis well are stirring and becoming more restless, and it's generally there's some dangers around here. And the current leader is, as we said, the halfling seer, whose distant lineage may relate to Sango.
Like this woman here on the facing page is probably an elder, because as it says in this section, other than freckles and silver hair, you can't really tell somebody's age.
Yep.
Because of these otherwise lost secret traditions of health that they have.
That's right. That's correct. So, the people of Osibu are very, like, they're loquacious, like we said before, and they, like, share things with each other, but obviously are getting a little bit worried about outsiders and very secretive about their city in general. There's a strong rapport between the generations. Because elders hold on to secrets, but youth goes out into the world, like Linda said. At this point, when it comes to outsiders, they kind of have, like, a rule where it's a kind of a 2-strike rule, where you mess up once and they're like, okay, well, you were an outsider, you know. Or I guess it's fully a 3-strike rule for people who live in Osibu, maybe a 4-strike rule. You can do 3, and then the 4th one is the problem. But if you're a guest, you only get 1 at the 2nd point, then you're a potential threat. And you receive the dreaming, which is not the standard process. Instead, they give you food and drink that are laced with something that puts you into a deep sleep, and you awaken in the jungle with magically faded memories. And it just remains a dream. You're like, I dreamed of a golden city in Mwangi Expanse, and other people are like, okay, buddy, that's fine. So let's see. Oh yeah, they said in chat that since trees are people to you, you thought of them as just basic characters, and so they couldn't get above level 20. All right. Let's see. So, when we're talking about the Chayup, that is the honored. I think that's the honored wise women, because the Ur-Chayu is the highest one, who basically vote and administrate. There are 100 who hold democratically appointed stations, and then there's twice honored women who maintain the protective wards. And the ancient spirits bestow what outsiders often call divine femininity upon children they're born into, regardless of sex. Which started with the 100 wise women who convinced Dimari Diji to stay within the city, and no one really knows why this happens. And then there's Dimari Diji. See, Linda? Nature Speaker 25.
Yes.
So, oh yeah,
what was
his first memory is the Starstone's approach. He's only 10 millennia old. He's a spry young fellow compared to the Bagambia. Well, actually, Bagambia isn't like that much older, but it is older. Even as his siblings died with the rest of Golarion, he survived Earthfall and is now known as Final Tree of the Elder World. And so he watches the Nemesis well and is worried about it, and nobody's like, come on, dude, you're to level 25, why are you so worried about it? And he doesn't really talk to people very much.
Although he does talk to
the
Jinga on the facing page, the current Orchayu.
Yep. And basically, in the 3 years since the Pathfinder's escape, they've created a plan to find future threats. And they're sending out the youths who are leaving with packets of fungi from Dimari Diji to find special places in the world. And they work like Arboreal Region's royal spores and link it to Dimari Diji's consciousness and allow Dimari Diji to find out more things by doing this. And every day, Dimari Diji allows the commoners of Osibu to ask him one question. He used to allow 3 questions, but the distractions from the more frequent requests are what led to the Pathfinder escape. So now, he only allows 1 question. And when we talk about the Nemesis, well, it's been there since, like, the city, before the city. So I guess, like, why do you build the city next to the Nemesis well? But they did. There are whispers from the well, sometimes in the Pathfinder Daron's voice, sometimes the voice of the Balor Lord Galundari, sometimes a chorus of evil.
And as it mentioned on the previous page, it's also sometimes in voices that make Dimari Diji fear that his lost siblings may be down there.
Yep, because I mean, if you're an evil well, you should do that to the person who's guarding and try to gaslight them because you're an evil demon well.
Yes.
That's what you do. So, Edgiara, the Conservatory of Ever, is one of the biggest and major structures that is not accessible to the public, and it houses precious plants officially, although also can be a meeting place for the Chayup and the Ur-Chayu. The Irindra, I'm sure that it had the pronunciation guide and that's probably wrong, is the Bazaar of Favors, where you can offer your skills to help others, and you barter your time and energy for other people's skills. The Nemesis well, obviously we've talked about it multiple times. It's bad. It whispers to you.
And it's been whispering a lot more often since Pathfinders came and messed everything up.
That's right. The Lens of Galundari is an artifact created by Nex. It trapped the Balor Galundari and was discovered by the Pathfinder Dervin Guest, who recognized it was dangerous.
And just tried to destroy it by throwing it down the Nemesis well.
I guess that's why the Balor is in there. So maybe the Nemesis well is not even demonic other than the lens being thrown into there. It's even more mysterious. The 12 Gardens of Isibu are the 12 neighborhoods of Osibu, and they each have some different things about themselves. Volvira, the Return, is one of the few structures with like doors, like traditional doors. And those who have completed their sprouting and gone throughout the world, they stay in there when they eventually come home. And they answer the questions of the Chayup about the outside world and are interrogated to make sure that there's no duplicity or other tricks that happen while they were in the outside world. And that is basically the situation. There's a secondary function, which is those who have betrayed Osibu's trust don't retain knowledge of the city. And so that's where you do the dreamings on people that you're going to send out in Volvira, the Return. So yeah, that's it. We're going to go to Sengor next time, which is a major Mwangi trading port and naval power. But for now, let's say goodbye to YouTube.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. We are returning back to the Mwangi Expanse, and this time we're heading over to Sengor.
And thank you, Numbat, for a tier of 1,000.
That's right. So Sengor is a major trading port in the Mwangi Expanse, and it's also a naval power. One of the few naval powers in the area that has successfully fought off the Shackles pirates multiple times. So you've got Sengor, governed by a mercantile council, 96% humans, 2% halflings, 1% dwarves, 1% everything else. It's got the Kaldo language because of Kaldaru, who live in Sengor, Dwarven, Halfling, Mwangi, and Taldane. A bunch of religions. Major threats: pirates, hurricanes, flooding, and sea monsters. With like all of which Besmara might send after you at some point. And it's got...
Don't make Besmara upset if you...
Yeah,
it's
only level 8, but it's got vehicles, especially nautical vehicles, up to a higher level than that. The most important people here are Isara, who is a human merchant, who is a shipping facilitator, Gyambako, who is a brewer and a merchant family patriarch, Dini Okpara, who is a magical merchant and scholar of antiquities, Bosede Eku, who is a prominent textile importer. So... they've got all sorts of shipping here, so ships and seafood, obviously, very important. A lot of the things you would ship, like spices and textiles, magic items, luxury goods, all those kind of things.
I mean, ships, magic items, luxury goods, no wonder they have to do with pirates.
Yeah, if I was a pirate, I'd probably want to pirate Sengor, other than the fact that they have a ridiculously powerful navy for the area that...
You can see that. Are those, like, cannons in the wall there?
Let's see.
Let's see by reading more about Sengor.
I feel like Sengor actually might have a few, and definitely like some of those places like Sengor and Vidrian might have some deals going on with Alkenstar where they're trying to get some. Obviously, pirates would love to get their hands on cannons. So let's look at
hold on. Numbat just gifted a ton of subs.
Okay, well, we have to acknowledge that. Wait,
how many subs was it?
Okay.
It's just a solid wall of subs. It looks like 10.
I think it was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it is 10, and
no,
it just...
wait.
Is 10?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 12. It's 12. Wow.
No, 10.
No,
10. Numbat's right.
Okay.
Wow, thank you so much.
All right. Wow, that's amazing. All right. So, if you take a look at the map of Sengor that we have here,
Numbat is like a little Numbat, like the animal Numbat, hopping on top of a massive pile of XP or swimming in a pool of XP.
So you can see there's like a grand market that's in the center. It's kind of like a U shape, where at the center of the horseshoe there's a narrow area that lets you get in to the main dock proper, and it's easy to defend with a lighthouse and the dock market, and you can head towards the grand market in the center of that, and the city just kind of surrounds it like that. And there's a whole bunch of bazaars, trading companies, exports. That's just what you're gonna get in Sengor. So see, we've moved on to the next spread. So yeah, it's basically a giant naval fortress. It's a city-state. Its ships are extremely advanced.
And they have some rather distinctive features, as you can see on this page and the previous page. The colors and the geometry of them, the loot and cook pot shapes. Presumably this is the loot shape, and then this one back on the... And these ones back on the previous page might be the cook pot. Or then these look more like turtles, honestly. That is some cool ship design.
Yep. They are amazing ships. It does say they will occasionally have cannons, but often it's some other kind of deadly weaponry. And yeah, they've got powerful ships. They've got this sea fortress area. And it was the trade hub between Mwangi, Expanse, and Avistan, just due to the fact that it would take people from almost anywhere, pragmatically neutral, and they also were really good at hunting down pirate ships and just dealing with Shackle's piracy in a way that many others were not. And the issue, though, is that after the fall of Sargava, where Sargava was kind of paying the free captains to get trade that was safe from piracy and protection from Cheliax, those have kind of fallen apart. There's other people to be looted, and it's the case that Sengor cannot, like, literally protect everything in those shipping lanes. So things are changing a little bit for Sengor, basically.
And there's the alliance between Vidrian and Sengor was signed and negotiated under while Vidrian was still in a very fragile position as a new nation, and so Vidrian's leaders want to renegotiate that deal to be more favorable, and there's not much interest in Sengor to renegotiate the deal that's very favorable to them.
If you think about it, right, Sargava had not only kind of almost immunity to the Shekels pirates, pirating them, but protection from the pirates. Vidrian did not. So they kind of had to accept anything that Sengor would offer them, so that Sengor would protect their ships somewhat from the Shekels pirates, because there's nobody else in the area who wants to do that, right? Like, okay, Cheliax sometimes attacks Shekels pirates, but they lost majorly recently. And just because Cheliax was mad at Sargava doesn't mean they're going to help Vidrian. They're evil. They're not going to randomly help Vidrian. So Sengor was kind of the only place that Vidrian could go, and Sengor knew that. So, yeah, Vidrian's going to look to try to renegotiate this whenever they can, if possible.
An interesting thing here, too, is that the merchants of Sengor, as you might imagine from, like, looking at the rich detail and quality in these ships, they really pride themselves on their artisanry and their skill, and on fairly paying workers and making sure that they're putting forth these high quality goods. But that actually earned Sengor quite a number of enemies, because there are a lot of people who would much prefer to deal with like cheap goods.
And so
the fact that then there's like these high quality Sengor products on the market makes it hard for people who are just trying to make a quick buck on mass producing cheap goods.
Yep. Also, one of the main things when they were being neutral towards most kinds of merchants and traders, Sengor has banned slaver ships in its ports. Even ships that do not currently have slaves
but are known to
carry slaves. That's been something that they've done even when certain other city-states and places in the area did not. And so that definitely has ruffled feathers among those who practice the slave trade. So basically when it comes to Sengor, unlike some of the other cities where there was a huge bustle of activity just before dawn, Sengor is actually kind of calm at that point in time, because of the fact that just some people have risen to prepare for the day's work. And
start the day with a cup of tea and go out into the street and individually greet everyone that you see.
Yep. And
it's not a place where they're like, running out into the street, shoving a piece of bread in their mouth and power walking to where they're trying to go.
That's right. And there are people from all sorts of different places who can wind up in Sangor, but even so, those who don't learn to respect the local traditions and cultures, some are known to kind of run into unexplained bad luck and become ostracized in an unusual way. And they can people have they have their daily routine. They wind down the day, and that's kind of how it goes in Sangor. And they tell tales of evil spirits and haunted buildings and weird misfortunes that might take place. So one thing that they invented in Sangor is a special adjustment for armor called armor latches, where you can wind up making your armor become noisy. If it's not already noisy, you can't really add armor latches if it's already noisy, and it lets you remove it very quickly in case you fall into the water. Because like we said, hurricanes and storms and other water-related issues are one of the big things in Sangor, and of course, on the side of not hazards, like shipping and doing things with the ocean is something they like to do in Sangor, so they want to have armor that is not going to drown. So, let's see. In Sangor, birth, marriage, and death are the most important celebrations, which are kind of important celebrations everywhere, I suppose. And they give lots of gifts and ask for blessings from the gods, which is fairly common in a lot of seafaring cultures across the inner sea, when everything relies on going out into a dangerous ocean, sending something out, and then hoping it comes back with what you need. That often leads to superstitions and all sorts of different prayers, and Sangor is no different than a lot of the other places that do that.
When it comes to celebrating holidays in Sangor, even that's fairly regimented, though. You'll have leaders who come together and consult with each other to decide exactly when and how holidays should be celebrated. But then, once they come to the point of celebrating, everybody kicks loose and has a wild and raucous good time.
Work hard and play hard. Mm-hmm. So, while people of Sangor are kind of pragmatic traders, they also are really proud.
People who trade, not people who betray.
Traders, not traitors.
Yes.
They're very, very proud about having a city-state that is just so amazing at trading and just has powerful navy and powerful merchants who are able to fight off the Shekels pirates. And so generally people of Sangor are particularly patriotic. And they don't want to let anyone from a foreign power to get a foothold in the city, even for a whole bunch of money. So it's not all just about coin, even though they're a place that really believes in merchants. They have gaffs, which are used by fishers and can also be used as a martial weapon in the club group. And there's all sorts of outfits. You can see some really, really neat outfits here. And there's...
you can see the intricate patterns on people's clothing. Those are used to indicate profession, social class, family, and even down to what kinds of wares a merchant offers in the marketplace.
That's right. And buildings
so you could look at someone,
also have
if you're from Sangor, and be like, yes, this person is from this family, and they sell produce.
Yep. So, a building might have patterns to also indicate that it's a residential house or a market house for a particular family or for any other reason. And their artistic tradition for buildings and clothing also came from the pragmatism of Sangor, because the pillars in the city helped to break down the flow of water between structures, slowing down erosion, and that eventually led to kind of sculptural statuary and some of the way that art just flowed from that. So it all started when they needed to make pillars because that's what was necessary based on the climate.
And then in some of the lower lying areas and markets, they've got a bunch of pillars that are used and utilitarian statues that are used as supports to string up tents so that they don't have to worry about their wares getting soaked in the rain.
That's right. So
it also leaves it a lot more customizable for changes in who's where and things like that.
Almost everything in Sangor that's important is some kind of a business. So instead of having prominent locations, there's prominent businesses section. There's the Asamoah haulers who haul things and cargo around for you. Isara and the Timnet Trade Company, which is we talked about Isara, the human merchant, at the beginning, who is sort of the uncrowned economic monarch of the city, with a hand in every pie. And the Timnet Trade Company is Isara's main trade company that kind of does transactions.
And one of the things that they do is to ensure delivery of goods to get past the shackles pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really important when you're out there.
Yep. And she may charge you both coin or favors. But she always gets cargo moved where it needs to go. There's Makalo's Exports, which have authentic rare goods from the Mwangi Expanse. There's the merchant families of Senghor, the three wealthiest families, which are the Eku family, the Bako family, and the Akpara family.
Well, one interesting thing about Makalo's Exports is that it's like a super tourist trap, and a lot of the locals are like, seriously, you're selling things for people? He's the type of person to be like, look at these mystical things from the Mwangi jungle that you could buy to put on your shelf, and other people are just like, And he's like, but it gives me lots of money from stupid foreigners.
Yep. And so the three main families, the Eku, Bako, and Okpara family, are very important. Eku control textiles. Bako control sugar, coffee, and beer, and Okpara control fish and movement of unusual or magical materials. Plus, the Jaja family is not a major merchant power, but are an old Kaldaru family noted for sorcerous magic. And they, while they don't have a lot of economic influence, there are a lot of people who have married into the family, which includes both Bako merchant family, have Basma Jaja in there, but then also the Okpara family has married in a second Jaja daughter, who serves as their sorceress. So the Jajas are kind of everywhere.
Yeah. It's like, well, you don't have mercantile influence, but you've got awesome magic, so.
Mm-hmm. The Port's Nest is a really famous inn in Senghor. There's Senghor Shipwright Guild, which make awesome ships in general. Yep. So there's something called the Secret of Boali, which is basically Kaldarus were merchant explorers from Arcadia who were welcomed to the city of Boali, who offered them land. They built the city of Senghor and kind of married in together with the local areas, and over the decades young people periodically disappeared. Eventually the Senghorites discovered their youths were being sacrificed by powerful Boali cultists to entities discovered in the ruins of Golgan. Well, that's not good. So the Senghorites raised Boali and executed the cultists and collaborators and rescued those meant for the sacrifices. And
they took in
all the children because they felt guilty since they were violating hospitality, even though it was the hospitality of people who were trying to sacrifice them. And that is just kind of what happened.
And there's still a small cabal in Senghor with the duty of guarding against the resurgence of other dangerous cults that might try to sacrifice people.
Dangerous murder cults.
Yes.
Yes. So other places that are not merchant places in Senghor,
Someone had asked, why is it always 3? It's the rule of 3.
It is the rule of 3. So there's Boali, the ruins of the ancient city of Boali, which we just described what that is. There's Burash's Lost and Found, which is not exactly the same as the other shops, but it's sort of like a trove of misplaced belongings.
Mm-hmm. There's a Pathfinder Society scenario that goes to Boali briefly. It's interesting, just like trying to get permission to go there at all.
Well, it's spooky. It's haunted.
It's spooky. It's haunted, and people don't want anyone poking around there into things that could be dangerous or encourage them toward the ways of the fallen city.
Dun, dun, dun. There's Afulita Plaza, which is a plaza that's like deep within the markets. It has an ancient tree called Afulita, which marks the location of the plaza. And basically what happens is that you gather there to try to get an apprenticeship from a really important artisan or merchant. And potential apprentices come there and compare their skills. There's the Gnarly Hyena, which is...
It's a great name.
Even though Sengor, like, really hates pirates more than almost anywhere else, there are a few Shackles Corsairs who have set up discreetly their own shop in the pub/tavern Gnarly Hyena for pariahs to kind of hide in the city and be pirates and not get caught.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't been revealed to actually be pirates, and it's not going to go well for them if they are. The Mixing Mingle is a restaurant, but it is not only that, it is also a place where you can buy unusual potions and elixirs kind of in the back, which are experimental creations that are created by the bartender Inyene, who is a gender fluid human alchemist.
And if you want to get a super cheap potion, you can drink a potion of a particular effect and question mark that has one of its original intended effects and then does something else.
Who knows?
Completely random. It might just do what you wanted it to do, or it might do something terrible. So risk takers and gamblers sometimes like to partake in these very cheap potions.
What a good deal. So Nagasha is a legendary sea creature that has gone after Sengor's ships, which very few sea creatures even bother trying to do. You've seen one of those ships. If I was a sea creature, I wouldn't do it. It is a giant, armored, spined fish with a sword-like tail and giant fins that spread like wings, and it either jumps into the air or flies, and it makes your ship get wrecked. And Sengor Navy did manage to kind of tear through one of the creature's fins, but it has otherwise completely eluded them. So some sailors who are particularly brave or foolhardy are trying to lure it away from the shipping routes with casks stuffed with tons of fish, and we'll see how that goes, I guess.
Sengor's also got a notice board, which is a large stone pillar for people to display advertisements and such. Though, on this notice board, some mysterious person has been eavesdropping into people's secrets and then just posts their secrets up on the board.
Well, that's not very nice.
And if people try to take them down before the person who posted them decided that they should come down, the secrets mysteriously appear again. This has been causing problems for some people in high society who've been finding their secrets posted for all to see. And you can claim that it's hearsay or rumor, and nobody knows for sure if all of it's true, but certainly it does get the gossip mill going, and no one's been able to figure out who's behind it.
So there's an ocean dock market. It's kind of a basic ocean dock market. Osei's Bazaar sells magical components, but it's definitely kind of components that would be dangerous to get because you have to kill some ridiculous monster or go to some really obscure place. It's gotten a lot of adventurers killed trying to supply that store. They also fence exotic animals. The Rainbow Den is an indoor plaza with rainbow-colored things of all sorts, like carpets, rugs, textiles, everything. Magically lit with rainbow colors. It's very rainbow. The Sengor Amphitheater is a great place for performance. There is the Sengor Lighthouse, which is has been raised and rebuilt 3 times, twice by natural disasters and once by conflict. It doesn't say which conflict, but it's probably pirates. Most likely. The language Kalda, spoken by Kaldars of Sengor, is notable for having almost nothing in common with other Mwangi tongues. Aside from several loan words, that's probably because of the fact that Kaldaru have their origin from coming over from Arcadia and mixing in. So there's probably a lot of Arcadian roots in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. Most linguists consider this more evidence that Kaldars originate from some place other than the Mwangi Expanse, which most people think they originate from Arcadia, so that makes sense. There's the southern seawall to hold back the roughest storms from the oceans, and that's basically it for Sengor.
Mm-hmm. How about Usaro?
Usaro, Well, the thing about Usaro is that it is a violent jungle domain filled with demon-worshipping fanatics. Its government is anarchy. Its population is 78% Charaka, 12% human, 10% other, with abyssal, draconic, Mwangi, and Okatan spoken. Religions only Angazan, the beast demon lord. Threats, awakened apes, demons, Charaka, religious cultists, orcs, and elf raiders who are raiding because they want to get rid of the demons. It's a ravenous domain. Evil creatures that worship Angazan gain the effects of protection against good creatures and effects while in Usaro. And the most important person is a powerful wizard leader of the Chosen named Chosembe. So, yeah, they've got good livestock and gems and magic items, even some technology, seafood, spices, armor, and weapons, but it's really a dangerous place. You can see the map here. It's very jungle.
Yeah,
you can see a river of blood
here, yes.
Yep, and something called the farm, which I'm sure is not horrible and terrible. I'm sure it's just a regular farm. Let's find out by going onward to this next page. So
you can see the altar of Angazan here.
It's a giant skull-shaped locus of power for Angazan. I mean, it just looks like a skull covered in blood. It's apparently the way that Guerrilla Kings of Usaro ascend to power. You present yourself at the altar over the corpse of your predecessor, if possible, and
either you're destroyed, which is the most likely outcome, or you're reincarnated into a gorilla.
I mean, either way you're destroyed, but you may or may not be reincarnated into a gorilla. It's Angazan's choice. Hopefully you were strong enough. That's why Usaro is known as the Altar of Might. Perhaps the most ruthless city in the entire Expanse. It is really sketchy. Once ruled by the Gorilla King, but it could be ruled by Gorilla King again, because, you know, there's an Altar of Angazan that can choose Gorilla King.
It's just that the most recent Gorilla King was killed by adventurers a few years ago.
Yes, during the Serpent Skull adventure path.
And the Altar of Angazan itself was Mwangi. A Mwangi raid took the altar away as well.
Yeah, so I guess they don't have a really good option for getting a new Gorilla King, thanks to the Mwangi's taking of the Altar of Angazan. So, yeah, it's pretty messed up, chaotic, evil place.
Now that they no longer, they also use the altar for other forced reincarnations, and now they're trying to find out other ways to force people to reincarnate and become servants of Angazan.
Yay! So yeah, Mwangi orcs and Kalijai elves attack them consistently to take their evil artifacts and destroy some of the demons that are there. It's just generally incredibly dangerous for everybody. If you're visiting, the inhabitants will try to kill you, and if you're an inhabitant, the other inhabitants will try to kill you, and so will the Mwangi orcs and Kalijai elves. So, they kind of had some elements of trade when the Gorilla King used his strength to kind of, like, force some trade between Usaro and other places, but those have broken down, and so you might be eaten by summoning experiments who roam the streets.
And you might have to, like, wait a minute, doesn't reincarnation have a specific thing where you can't be reincarnated unless you want to be? Special exception for the Charaka here, which is part of what makes them such a hated and feared foe, the fact that they can capture people and reincarnate them against their will.
Yep, it's pretty evil. Pretty evil indeed. So yeah, what is life like in Usaro? It's not good. The servants of Angazan make up the majority of the population, and if you're not those, then you're an underclass who live in fear and extreme poverty. You leave offerings of meat outside so that you don't get eaten. It's not a good situation. Traveling merchants who are powerful enough to enter the city without being killed will come to trade goods because they can get a good profit, since most other merchants won't go there. They're generally like that trope of retired adventurers where it's like, you know, from the list, that ancient list that went out in the early internet of, like, you know, your GM hates you when you attack the shopkeeper and they're really a retired 20th level elven mage. Well, in Usaro, the merchants who come there may actually be a retired 20th level elven mage. Like, you never know. they have a serious agriculture problem and will eat whatever they can scavenge or buy when it comes to that. There's tons of fights and executions and blood rituals, which even serve as entertainment in Usaro. It's like,
and they have even
come see the execution or the blood ritual.
They have even more of them on their only holiday, which is the last day of the year to celebrate Angazan.
Yay, Angazan. It represents death because it's the final day of the year. The death of the year and the reincarnation of the new year, possibly as a gorilla, I guess.
And the River of Blood isn't just like, oh yeah, it's kind of red like some other things. No, it's literally filled with gore.
Yeah, you know. Like you do. Like you do. So, yeah. Obviously, worshipping a demon lord is not a great situation. There are many evil rituals, such as chanting, beating on drums, and consuming hallucinogens, which may give you astonishing powers or, like, kill you or turn you into a gorilla. Which, kill you or turn you into a gorilla is just generally something that can
That's
usually...
kind of a theme
that
in
can
Usaro.
happen with anything from Usaro. So, basically, if you're in Usaro, you're either someone who worships Angazan and are incredibly evil and violent,
and are constantly trying to grasp for power and status,
or you're a prisoner or lower class, or at least descended from those people, even if you've managed to, like, not quite be as badly off as before, and you just don't know any other place, and you haven't thought to get the heck out of Usaro, even if you could.
And as for people who travel there, it's often people who are like, yeah, you know, I'm from a pretty rough place, and they look at Usaro with dollar signs or gold pieces in their eyes, and they say, yeah, you know, I can make it here. I'm going to start a criminal empire. I'm going to do these sorts of things. But most of them don't actually survive.
Not even the first week. If they survive the first week, then they're probably they're going to have a chance, maybe. But they usually die a few days after arriving in Usaro. That's just how freaking dangerous Usaro is. So yeah, you really don't want to come to Usaro for really any reason. Unless the reason is that you want to destroy the demons and you're like a powerful Matanji or Kalijai warrior, or you want to steal their artifacts, because Usaro does have a bunch of stuff that you can steal. When it comes to people who have a lot of influence and are not a gorilla, we talked before that the only real person who fits that description is Shosembe, who's an evil, extremely powerful wizard who basically arrived in Usaro as one of those people who comes and then a lot of them just die in the first few days. And he was different. He was really prepared. He snapped the neck of a Cherokee when they tried to kidnap him immediately, even though he's a wizard. Yeah, like you do, you know. They kind of respected that. And he built himself up a following. He claimed to be a loyal follower of Angazan and declared war against the Matanji and Kalijai. Very popular in Usaro to declare war against the Matanji and Kalijai, since they are obviously declared war on Usaro.
So a lot of people look at him and they're like, yeah, he's a great candidate for the new Gorilla King. We can't get a new Gorilla King yet while the altar is missing, but once we get it back...
Yep.
And he certainly has plans for it, but he wants to try to subvert that whole plan by using some soul magic to disrupt the process, get reborn as himself, and then trap Angazan inside his soul gem, steal Angazan's power, and then rule the city. Which, you know, we got a bit of like egomaniacal wizard going on here, being like, yeah, you know what, I can take down a demon lord.
Listen, alright, so everyone thought he was going to be as violent as all the other leaders, but he paused the war and tried to, like, restore order and build relationships and told the slave class humans that he's going to liberate him once he's taken control of the city and let them be treated as equals of the Angazan people. He basically is playing every side off of everyone else and wants to take all of Angazan's power. He's incredibly manipulative and obviously very ambitious. And not everyone in the city is behind him.
But a lot of people are.
Yep.
And if he does get what he wants, he would definitely be the biggest threat of any Gorilla King.
That's right. Because that is a lot of things that he wants.
So, let's see what the prominent locations in Usaro are.
They have lovely names.
It's not like nice businesses like in Sengor. What are we going to start with? We're going to start with the Chasm of Screams,
Why would we not start with the Chasm of Screams? Like, everywhere's got to have their own Chasm of Screams, right? I mean, there's Chasms of Screams in all sorts of different places, and Usaro is no different. So, what's the deal with the Chasm of Screams?
So, this Chasm of Scream has mist that rises out of it, and the mist itself is carnivorous. It devours the flesh that it touches.
Okay, but what makes this Chasm of Screams different than the one in the Mindspin Mountains?
Let's see. This one's got sacrifices.
Okay, that's pretty good. The Mindspin Mountains
and then
has cannibalism. What about this one?
It's got the river of blood that flows through it.
Okay, that's pretty good. But the one in the Mindspin Mountains had hags.
There's constant screams that rise from it.
Okay, but are there any...
And the chasm apparently takes a super long time to kill. I don't know.
Okay.
But there's that mist.
Okay.
Which is empowered. It's the mist that devours flesh that it touches and is said to be powered by the spirits of the people who were thrown into it to die a slow death.
The mist of Mwangi?
It's the mist Tiktan.
Okay. So, I don't know, you're gonna have to decide...
Which Chasm of Screams
if you're watching this, which one is the more... screamiest Chasm of Screams.
Fair enough.
Varisia has one, and so does Usaro, and they're both good Chasms of Screams.
Fair enough.
What about the farm? Because that sounded really ominous.
It sounded really ominous. Yeah,
so it does say it is founded by the more depraved locals. It's where humans descended from former prisoners have a residential neighborhood that is called the farm. And that's... Yeah, it's a human farm of the prisoners' descendants. Disguised Batanji and Kalijai visitors tend to be welcomed by the locals because maybe they'll protect them. There's the High Throne. That's that giant, like, step pyramid with the giant gorilla skull motif that we saw in the center of the map. It's the most important location.
Like, pretty much everywhere else in Usaro, it's littered with bodies.
Oh, yeah. But it does not have one thing that it had before, which is an altar of Angazan there.
That's true.
Since that has been stolen by Batanji orcs.
As before, there's the River of Blood. It also has, like, everywhere. Giant leeches in there.
Oh, yeah, you've got to have giant leeches
Charuka abominations.
Linda, if I was a giant leech, I would want to live in the River of Blood, because I wouldn't have to do any work to get my blood.
Some people say that the river is alive.
It might be.
Or part of Angazan, or all sorts of terrible things.
Yep. It's also dangerous to cross. The vaults, which supposedly hold the hidden treasures of every incarnation of the Gorilla King, but and there's legends about them. People try to find them, and nobody really knows, although it's suspected that Worldbreaker, the giant siege engine that the Gorilla King stole from Taldor's 6th Army of Exploration, is going to be in there. As well as a giant...
I mean, to be fair, the 6th Army of Exploration was attacking, so, like...
Also, the giant...
This isn't like some of the other things, of just an example of the Gorilla King and other Angazans
but the Gorilla King did just steal a giant bombard cannon from the Manaways. People often get it confused with the Worldbreaker siege engine from Taldor, and are like, the giant Taldor cannon is like, no. He has 2 giant Doomsday engines, one of which is a giant bombard cannon. Why not
2 giant Doomsday
One of which
cannons?
is a more mechanical siege engine that is just of unprecedented size. Mm-hmm. And the vaults are really why those raiders who want to steal artifacts are going to try to find, but they have remained unpenetrated, and even their existence has not necessarily been proven. So that's basically the deal with Usaro, and next time we can go into Vidrian. But let's say goodbye to YouTube.
That is true. Bye, YouTube!
Bye, YouTube. See you next time.